In this lesson, I'm going to cover the fine-tuning adjustments on the paintbrushes. So for this particular case, I'm just going to go ahead and open up a blank touch screen here. We'll open up 1024 by 768 is fine. And I just want to cover some of the fine adjustments that are brand new in the new version of Photoshop here. Just noticed these a little while ago. So if I'm on a regular straight paintbrush, and clear background is fine. So I go to a regular paintbrush. And just so that you can see it probably a little bit brighter, I'll go with some light blue color there. So you obviously notice that you can paint with a paintbrush. Let me back up here, get rid of those. So first and foremost, I've got my brush size up pretty big. Let me shrink that down just a little bit, and you notice you can paint your lines here, right? The new functions at the top, the left one looks like a circular dial, and this actually will spin. Means absolutely nothing with the brush type that I'm on right now. So I'll come back to that in a quick second. If I start messing around with the horizontal and vertical spacings here, you'll notice this your vertical spacing allows you a lot wider of a pen. If I start sliding on the horizontal spacing of this pen, you notice you kind of get some pretty cool effects. And again, all of these effects you'll see make a big difference when we start going into the next panel. So as I mess around with some of those things, okay, let me back up a little bit. You can see how you can drastically change your the way your pen, your paintbrush functions. So if I just messed around with the horizontal and now I start painting, you can actually see what kind of an effect that makes. If I go back and we'll bring the horizontal back down and turn the vertical over. I'm sorry, vertical and horizontal. This is the horizontal one now. So if I change the horizontal spacing, you can see how that happens. And notice the screen is very case sensitive, very touch sensitive. So if I cut back over and I'm slower with my pointing device, everything turns out slower and you add more color. If I'm faster, you notice the dots are spread out a little bit more. So still very touch sensitive on the top of the screen. So let me get rid of all those. So there's your horizontal and vertical spacing. And again, we'll come back to these in a quick second. In the book, I do cover size, hardness, flow, and opacity within your brush, so you can go back and look at those. The other new panel that they've added within the paintbrush fine-tune adjustment is up in the top right corner. You see it looks like a grid. If I push on that, this is where it gets really, really interesting. Below what you'll find are different paintbrush heads. So immediately the default is the circular brush head. You've got a square brush head, the next one over, and then you have these rectangular ones. And if you've ever messed around with some type of a graphics program, even just a digital drawing program, these should look familiar to you. These rectangle brush heads will allow you to create basically a stroke look, a paint stroke, which is more of a painting idea, you know. So I've changed it. Now when I go and paint, you notice that the line looks differently. It's not made with a circle. It's made with that rectangular surface. So if I go up and down, you can get some different thicknesses based upon that rectangle. Okay, so that's that rectangular head. Now here's where it gets really interesting. With the rectangular head, here's where the adjustments matter. I go back to the circle with the handle on it, and this is your rotation tool. So if I want a different rotation on that, let's say I want straight up and down rectangle, and I start painting, and you see that kind of changes things. Anytime I go horizontally, it's a thinner line, and then I start going vertically, and it's a thicker line. And that's what that rotation will do for you. The cool piece of this rotation is you can get some really cool effects by rotating it in an angle. So if I start doing that, that's where you get a lot of people will work with this with calligraphy and that kind of thing. And that's how you're changing your brush head there. So that's what the rotation does. Let's start messing with the horizontal and vertical spacing on this brush head. If I change the horizontal spacing, it's almost like a dotted line going on now. And one more change. Let me pull that back. If I change the vertical spacing, kind of gives you a neat effect there. We got little rectangles all over the place. There are some other brush heads in here that are pretty interesting to work with. If I go back, now you start seeing all the different rectangles. You've got an oval, which the ovals will give you a different feel. If I start to look at something like a paint daub, we'll pick up this paint daubish kind of looking thing. Now if you look at rotation, you can see what rotation does to that paint daub. You can see what extending this does, right? So if I lay out on the horizontal fine tuning, it expands it horizontal and you actually see each paint daub. But if I keep them both 0, look what it looks like. It just looks like a kind of a paint stroke, which is kind of interesting. So now if I go painting with this, you actually see, if I speed up, you actually see the paint head following me, and it looks exactly like it does on the panel. But that'll give you an effect. So that's with everything horizontal and vertical turned off. But if I expand those horizontals, and let's just do horizontal for a second, you actually see the paint head dropping the pattern right on the image. Okay, so pretty neat effect. Some of these don't work exactly like the way you want them to. So if I go back here and let's just use this. We'll use the feet. These are like baby feet, right? Let me get rid of the one I just did. And now I go back and let me change this. I'll put these both back to 0. And again, if I put horizontal and vertical back to 0, you'll notice that it's just a two-line paint pattern. So you're like, where are my baby feet, right? So if I go back and I change this and spread out that pattern, increase the size, and you start to see the baby feet form. Let me increase, I'll change the rotation as well. And now when I start painting, then it gets pretty cool and you actually see the feet all around. Okay, so moving those adjustments will help you when you start changing your brush head into different things. The grass was something I was messing around with a little earlier. You know, you've got that one piece of grass expanded, and again, if I shrink it all up, it looks like a general brush. And I start painting. That's a kind of a cool effect, but it's probably not what you want with that grass. That wasn't what you were looking for. So let me expand that out and out that way, and then you start painting. And that's probably what maybe you wanted some like that, and maybe you want to rotate and do some more. And you can actually see how you could fill in with a really cool brush effect. So this is the next rendition of Photoshop Touch, and they're continuing to make Photoshop Touch more like Photoshop as they keep going. You could even change the color and put in some green grass if you wanted amongst the blue grass. So again, you get the idea. And again, this is what they're trying to do is add more functionality to Photoshop, complete with the brush head adjustments, as well as when we get into selections down the road, they added a brand new selection of the, where is it? There it is right there, the quick selection tool, which is, I would be honest with you, with being a Photoshop user, one of the most powerful selection tools there are. And now you can find it within Touch. So it does change what you can do with Touch.